Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Bright Side of Life. I am your host, of course, Melissa Bright, and today you are in for a treat because we are talking about the lovely, fun conversation of relationships. Today, I have Matthew Fray, and he is a relationship coach and author who leans on the lessons of his unfortunate failed marriage and divorce to help others avoid making the same mistakes that he did. His book, This Is How Your Marriage Ends, just came out last March. So we're going to be talking a lot about those components and everything that we can learn about relationships in about an hour. Matthew, do you go by Matt or Matthew? What do you want me to call you?
It's like I'm really comfortable with either.
Okay.
I would say most people in like my inner circle call me Matt, but in like this application, most people say Matthew just because it's what's on the binding.
I know it's so formal, and I previously have already interviewed Matthew for the Best Year of Your Life Summit, and that said Matthew on there, and I was like, I feel like we're Matt and Mel now at this point.
Okay.
If that's cool with you.
It is.
Perfect. Okay, Matt, we're going to start at the very beginning. I want you to tell me a little bit or a lot of bit of kind of about your story and how you came to be married to divorced to relationship coach.
I think the fairest, most contextual way to do it is to say that when I was 4, my parents split. And this would have been 1983-ish in Iowa, of all places. Not terribly far from you, I don't think, a little bit north.
Yep.
And in 1983, you could get a divorce and take a child like away from like where they live. That wasn't weird then. Where now I'm not sure very many judges are gonna like sign off on that. But what my mother was out there for college and met my father, got married, I came along. And then after like her, personal life out there fell apart, she wanted to return to Ohio where she was originally from and, where she had support and safety. And I totally get that. Like, and she was young, they were babies. They were in the early 20s when they got married. Things like that were happening more frequently back in the late 70s and 80s. And anyway, so I lived 500 miles apart, the moral of the story, from one of my parents at any given time. And that was like my first really uncomfortable set of life circumstances because it was really difficult to wave goodbye to one of my parents for a really significant amount of time. With all due loving respect to my mother, it was particularly hard to wave bye to dad because I understood like the time deficit of not seeing him, right?
Yeah.
That felt like the thing that I didn't get to have that I really wanted all the time. Anyway, so that stuck with me, age 4 on. And one of the beliefs that I had was this notion that, well, I don't exactly know what's going to happen someday, but I'm really confident I'm not going to get divorced. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to avoid divorce because I have a real sense of like the consequences of that. And that was with me just my entire life. And then so fast forward to college, I met my girlfriend when we were at the time when we were freshmen. We didn't like really become like a romantic couple for another 4 years. We were just people who knew each other and, interacted and had mutual friends and things like that. Yeah. But we got together, when we were about 21 or so. And I don't know, one thing led to another. We moved to Florida together. We got engaged, a few years later. We were married a year after that. And then, before you know it, you're in what is supposed to be domestic bliss. But then you sort of like learn the hard way that when you share a life with someone, there are all these things that you didn't understand were things, right? When you're a child, when you're a teenager, when you're in your early 20s, you have no idea that seemingly inconsequential at the time, at least to me, conversations about, I don't know, dinner plans, things like that could cause so much, I don't know, sort of stress and strain in a relationship. I did not navigate those things well. Anything that I deemed unworthy of like fighting about, anything I thought wasn't very important, anything that I wouldn't get mad at her about was maybe my litmus test. I was like, why is this such a thing for you? And, I was a serial invalidator. I deserve zero sympathy from anybody who's been on the receiving end of not being able to be heard from the person who
Okay.
promised to like love and honor them forever. And but I didn't honestly know, right? I thought I was disagreeing. I didn't have a frame of reference for how damaging to trust and relationships this was. Not at the time. My marriage imploded. She left April 1st, 2013. It's a real easy date to remember. And I've been sort of working on this ever since. That was like a really difficult, like the darkest time in my life. I felt extremely like miserable and like alone-ish.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I'd never experienced like internal pain before. And the beautiful part about experiencing internal pain for the first time is it gives you context for how other humans, how they like carry around pain inside them. And if you've been like this privileged, nothing super bad has really ever happened to you. Again, outside of the discomfort of my parents splitting when I was 4, nothing bad ever happened to me, near as I
Yeah.
can tell.
Right.
And nothing of major consequence, I don't think. And man, when you have like a charmed, predominantly problem-free existence, you like learn this like really difficult lesson. Anyway, I opened my eyes to this notion of people can carry pain around on the inside. And I began to ask the question, is this the kind of thing she felt when she was
Mm.
crying in the kitchen or crying on the living room sofa and was talking about just how angry and how sad and how afraid she was because I wasn't getting it. You know, I don't know. We've all, I think virtually everybody listening to this will have some context from their personal life of a conversation that it's like, how are we even here?
Right.
With raised voices and, you know, fight or flight going on over something that if you said it out loud, you know, like a year earlier, you're going to have like a really huge fight about this thing. Everybody would be like, no, we're not.
Yeah.
But we all sort of do in our own way. And anyway, I mean, that's really the story. I
Okay.
suffered and it opened my eyes to this isn't okay. I mean, it's actually kind of pathetic. It's like it took me hurting enough to like do the work of understanding like how I got myself here. And then it's morphed into something less selfish over time because I'm like, wow, I feel like I really learned this. I'd like to help others learn this too.
Yeah. Okay. I have about 80,000 questions since you've explained it that way now, but I won't. And I know this is going to be hard because there were probably several different fights, little fights about things, but when she was explaining these to you, was she explaining those exact words? Like you make me angry, or the way you respond to me makes me sad, or you make me feel invalidated? Because some people aren't even that aware that that's happening. Like they don't even know that they're being invalidated. They could just say, Matt, you're such an asshole that you did this small thing, but they don't realize that it's even deeper. So was she helping bring that awareness, I guess?
I don't think she used toxic language, but the way that I've always said it is
Mhm.
her methodology did not result in me understanding. You know,
Right.
she would
Yeah.
be angry, but I mean, I think a lot of that was like my own biases and filters. I don't like when people are angry with me, right? I don't like feeling blamed for things that I don't think. I think this is
Right.
happens all the time. Like, you know, we think we're nice, we don't think we do bad things. We don't like being on the receiving end of, you know, it feels like unjust judgment or criticism or
Yes.
punishment.
Yes.
And again, the common refrain of people on sort of my side of the relationship equation that I encounter, which are predominantly men, you know, like 95 out of 100 times it's going to be like the male in a male female relationship, like saying these things. And the thinking seems to be, and I defend them a little bit. I don't mean to justify it. I
Yeah.
mean to say I understand how they arrive at the conclusions they did because it was the same for me. It was like, I love this person. I genuinely love them. I
Mhm.
want to be with them. I said, of all the people I could ever be with, I chose you. You have everything I have is yours. And there's just nothing I wouldn't do for you in the context, right? There's obviously a lot of stuff we won't. But that's how like we think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I will like work to create any opportunity I can possibly create for you. I don't know, like it, and I think like the thing that really hurts the average guy or person in this scenario is the notion that when similar things happen on your side of the equation, I spare you anger and frustration and criticism and suggestions that you failed somehow. I don't know that this is always true, but I mean,
Why is
I hear
that?
it a
No,
lot.
it's true. It's true in my scenario. Why do you do that?
I mean, I think it's some sort of like misguided hero complex. Like, I'm gonna be like the valiant, chivalrous person who like rises up and doesn't allow some seemingly small thing to become, like a thing that I'm gonna. But what's actually true is often these little things are bothering the men or the more stoic member of the couple, and they're just holding it in. There's sort of like this like subtle dishonesty to it. It's well intended. It's like I don't want to cause conflict. I don't want to cause a fight. But when we don't express honest, vulnerable, authentic need in relationships, we are depriving our partner of knowing something about us that they probably want to understand.
Did you use that ever as a one up, or as to get back to her in terms of like, I don't bring up anytime you leave your freaking plate on the thing. Why are you doing it to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That was like, to me, that was like the trump card.
Yeah.
That was what made what she was doing to me unfair, while I was playing the victim of, like my angry wife who doesn't know how to measure things that are important versus things that are unimportant. That was the really unhealthy, dysfunctional way that I thought about it 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. I really, really like your, how, when you were in pain, like how you were basically able to empathize with your wife finally. What were some other things that you did to learn to come to these realizations I mean, you're now a relationship coach. Like, you can tell me anything that you did, because I am such a big person on self-reflection. As you know, I just got out of a relationship not even 3 months ago, and I'm like self-reflecting, playing things back, wanting to learn to improve, whatever. So what were some of like the biggest things, aha moments that you did to really learn that if I could have known this then, I could have probably saved my marriage? And I know that's a loaded ass question, but I'm
No,
asking it anyway.
it really is. But I mean, it's got a really easy, low hanging fruit answer for me.
Good.
In June or July, I think it was late June
Of
of
this
2013,
okay.
the year that, so my wife at the time moved out April
Mhm.
1st, 2013. By late June, I tell the story in the book. I got a little tipsy. I was self-medicating with liquor just to like get through the lonely evenings.
Yep.
And my HR department had handed me, I'm freaking out. Like, I was just, I don't know, talking to one of the HR people. I'm like, here. And they gave me this card. And there's like, we have this like therapy thing. You can call a therapist and have a conversation with them. And I'd never spoken to a therapist before, not as an individual.
Yeah.
We'd attended a couple, like 2
Mhm.
or 3 marriage counseling sessions at the
Okay.
end that were,
Yeah.
they didn't go well. For all
You
the
don't
obvious
say.
reasons. Yeah. When you're not having the same conversation, bringing a third party in isn't useful.
Mm.
You know what I mean? When you don't have shared language.
Yeah.
And again, thing I learned the hard way. But anyway, so I call this lady one night, and then the quick version is she's like, "Hey, you're a writer. You should be writing this stuff." And so I kind of rolled my eyes at the advice, because she meant like journal, like an adult, which I've really come to understand is a valuable practice, even though I don't do it because I lack discipline in various areas of my, like time management and things like that. But like the idea of it really appeals to me once like I understood I don't know, just like the anchor it provides.
Yeah.
But I started a blog. I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll put it on the internet. And so I start sort of like journaling, and the idea was I'm going to share all of these sort of like self-deprecating, borderline dysfunctional stories about like the new, through, I guess I was 33 or 34 at the time, trying to figure out like post-divorce dating and what to do and all of this. And I don't know, maybe I wrote maybe like 7 to 10 blog posts that sort of had that tone. And then just something flipped and I decided to start taking it seriously. I think it was when people were in the comments saying, hey, this sounds like my life. This kind of thing happened to me. And I'm like, whoa, like if strangers are going to pay attention to me, I feel something of a moral responsibility to not
Just
add
F off.
more
Yeah.
like white noise to the universe that doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, how can I provide value? Like, how can I do something that matters? And so
Yeah.
it's like, why don't I go ahead and document like this sort of journey of self-discovery that I'm on? This search
Okay.
for answers as to how I went from this really happy, positive person who never had, I just didn't have any bad relationships, at least that I was aware of. I probably did, but that was right through this like prism of like not knowing how my actions
Right.
inadvertently negatively affected other people.
Yeah.
Anyway, I arrived at a lot of conclusions. Anyway, I think
Okay.
that the most efficient answer is blog readers, hundreds, thousands of strangers providing feedback to blog posts that I'd written resulted in challenging the way that I was thinking and feeling about things, resulted in shared life experiences that helped me gain insight, that led me to thought leaders and book authors and speakers that I'd never encountered before. And, you know,
Okay.
you add all that up over
Yep.
3, 4, 5 years, I don't know, you just evolve.
You absolutely do. That we don't have a similar story in terms of like I didn't blog, but once I started my podcast was simultaneously like the same week or two that I started therapy to deal with my mom's death that had happened 10 years prior. And then on top of that, I started interviewing just different people, but then I started interviewing mental health experts. So stuff that I would start. I mean, I've had over 100 and something speakers now interview people, and that's how I've learned like so much, you know, from people just like yourself. So I think it's incredible. I also want to ask, you said it, but I just want to make sure. You said self-deprecating, which is like you're basically talking shit on yourself and
I do it a little
yeah.
bit, yeah.
Okay, so in these blog posts you were speaking truth. Okay. And the reason why I'm asking that is obviously it's your truth. But if you wanted to get somebody's real, honest advice, but then you go and try to make her look bad just so you could look better, like you weren't doing that. Were you trying to be as honest about a situation? Say you wrote about the dish by the kitchen sink. You wrote about that, but were you explaining it as honest as you could without making either do you understand the
Yeah.
question I'm
No,
asking?
absolutely. I didn't really, if I was going to paint somebody negative in a story from the past about my marriage, it was going to be me. There was not going to be a lot of finger pointing. I have offered some gentle criticism, but it would have been something like, I don't think she explained what the problem was that she was having
Mhm.
in a manner that I could understand,
Yeah.
and that maybe she could have put a little bit more like time, effort, and energy into seeing if she could reframe her messaging in order to like reach me.
Yeah.
Like that's something, but I
Okay.
mean, nothing, nothing gross, nothing like mean. No, and but that speaks to like what the mission was. The mission ended up being, can I retell, relive, reframe the marriage in a man to my audience in a manner that honors what my wife must have felt at the time,
Mm.
because that's how you figure out how things that you've done or said or
Right.
not done or not said resulted in trust erosion, resulted in pain, resulted in loss of intimacy and feelings of romantic love,
Yeah.
all of that. Like if I just sit around whining about my own version of everything, it's always going to sound like I got screwed. If
Yeah.
I'm able to accurately or damn near accurately describe what she must have experienced,
Mhm.
make her the protagonist in the story.
Yeah.
I actually think that's kind of the hack for relationships, by the way. I like to say, if you can explain the story of your relationship in front of your partner to like a stranger in a manner that your partner like nods their head and says, that's exactly right. That's exactly how I feel when such and such a thing happens. If you can do that with precision and accuracy and consistency, you can be trusted in the relationship. And if you
I
can't,
like that.
then even if you're not a mean person who hurts people on purpose, you still can't be trusted to meet someone's needs, to understand what they're dealing with on a case-by-case basis, not because you're a jerk, but because you fundamentally do not know that X, Y, or Z results in my partner feeling this bad thing. And I'm blind to it because I don't feel it too. And then when they try to tell me about it, it doesn't go well because it doesn't make sense to me. And that, I think, is generically like the dynamic in like every relationship.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't think that you were going on a public platform and just bashing her because it would not serve you any purpose. And that is something that I will say when my ex now, we had went through a small breakup in 2018. And I really learned a lot from him when we got back together in that terms, because I did go to some friends and I was very, very less emotionally intelligent than I am now. And things that I was perceiving weren't actually the truth. And it really painted him in a bad light, even almost going as far as saying he was narcissistic. And that is so far from the truth. And I really do regret saying those things about him. But it really started, I wanted to become more aware, to really speak truth, to really say, like, is this really what's happening? And is this reality? So I just asked that just because I'm currently just wanting to go through that. And when I call my friends now, and if I'm going through a situation, I want to try to give it as honestly as possible. Well, obviously still saying my experience and being like, I'm pissed off or I'm angry, but that still doesn't mean that that other person can't feel sad or mad or glad too. Does that make sense?
Oh, it really does. I also
Okay.
like to defend briefly, if I may, 5 years ago. Another thing that I think about a lot is the idea that I talk about things in really simple math terms, like the result of our actions. So we do stuff, and then the equal sign is like what happens to people in our sphere of influence.
Yes.
If
Yes.
the math result of things that he did 5 years ago felt to you exactly as what it would have felt like to be dating or married to a narcissist, I don't really know what the difference is. Do I think labeling somebody something they're not useful? No.
Right.
It just causes like needless like conflict tangents.
Yeah.
But the point is the impact on you
Mhm.
probably more or less mirrored what would have happened if some sociopathic narcissist was like out to get you. And in all seriousness, like I used to be offended by little labels and things like that. And then it occurred to me one day, wow, like if you're my ex-wife, what's the difference? Just because I'm not narcissistic, what's the difference? If my feelings always trump hers in every moment I live in every conversation we have,
Yeah.
I might as well be like from her perspective. And so anyway, that's
okay.
I'm sure he's a fantastic human being. I believe you. I really do.
Yeah.
I also believe the math result of things he said and done or didn't say and didn't do at times hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that doesn't make him bad. It means pain happened. And sometimes that doesn't get repaired very effectively in relationships. I know that I was really awful at it.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So I want to look at my questions, but I also want, because we're going on the way that where we want to go in terms of the conversation. And I also want to preface this because I know I have a lot of female listeners, but I also know that I have a lot of male listeners. So first of all, I think I can speak for both of us. This is not going to be a conversation of just like men just F up all the time and you guys are wrong and women should take no accountability and no responsibility and it's just all on the guy, because I do not at all like believe in that. I am very much always trying to become aware of like how I can be better, be more responsible for all my stuff. So with that also being said, there might be some statistics that Matt might know that happens to be like, well, more men feel this way than women. So I just want to preface that this is not going to be a men bashing thing.
Thank you. I get accused of it sometimes and I really don't like it. You know,
Right.
I promise 0 of my coaching clients that are male, which is 95+% of them,
Mm-hmm.
would suggest that I'm unsupportive of men and male-female relationships. They just wouldn't do that.
Right.
I understand very much. I think most guys are in relation, at least the ones I encounter, they're like wonderful people.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean after they do things, their wife doesn't experience intense pain from it.
Mm.
And that's like the message I really, really try to drive home.
Yes.
In that way. And if you can understand that as a human being, that people can hurt really bad, even if you don't try to hurt them, even if you don't understand why they're hurt, if you can just take accountability for it and help like eliminate like the pain that they're experiencing, I don't know,
Right.
change everything in a relationship
Exactly.
instead of
Exactly.
putting your hands up and saying, hey, that's not my fault, I didn't mean to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then let's give this example. So Matt wrote, was this a blog post, the one about the kitchen sink, the
The
dish by the
dish,
sink?
yes, the original title was She Divorced Me Because I Left Dishes by the Sink, and
Okay.
it published in January of 2016 and
Okay.
was insanely popular for a pretty long time.
Right.
Pretty long time. Yeah.
Well, I know just on your blog alone, it has 4.6 million views, and that's not considering all the other places it's been shared to and everything.
Yeah, that's a big number
That is
relative
a
to
huge
every
number.
single other thing on my
Yeah,
blog. It's it dwarfs it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it is the best title ever, and because it resonates with, well, let's just say so many people. So why don't we give this as a classic example? This is the situation, Matt. You just went into your kitchen, you put your dish by the kitchen sink, and your wife just said what to you?
Well, I think, she wouldn't have been like mean about it necessarily. She would have kind of like poked at me, like ribbed me, like, Matt, is it really necessary that you put that glass there? I want to make it clear to anybody who doesn't have context for the story. I didn't leave like dirty dishes after dinner piled up with like a bunch of crap on them. Like, I didn't do that. Very specifically, it's a drinking glass. It's a one drinking glass from the cabinet. I would quickly fill it with water so that I could take like vitamins and supplements and medicine and things like that in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I just left it there because all that was in it was water. And it just felt efficient to like have it kind of in the corner by the sink. But she didn't like it. She was a lot more organized and valued, the whole like feng shui thing, like a lot more than I did. And we would have a debate because eventually she'd get mad at me, right? She was like probably nice-ish the first 20 times, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she started to get frustrated, as one does, when they try to express wants and or needs in a relationship and the other person is so dismissive of them, which I was prone to do. And I just, eventually it turned into, I can't believe you're getting mad at me and elevating this glass sitting here by the sink to a marriage problem. I can't believe you're doing that. Like, I thought she was unreasonable for doing that. And she, of course, thought all what I now understand to be like really fair and reasonable things that the glass indicated I thought and felt about her when I left it there. And so I just like to say I've had a lot extraordinary feedback from that over the years. The vast majority positive, but I've had some criticism, largely from men.
Yeah.
Not
You don't say.
Not to stereotype, but largely from men. And the feedback is this, Matt. All right, I get your story. Like, we get it. But like, what are you advocating here? That we just do whatever our wives want all the time? Like, that doesn't seem like a healthy, fair, balanced relationship. And they ask the question, and it took me quite a while to figure out how to answer it in the way that I now answer it. I said, Matt, why don't your feelings, your preference for the glass being there, why don't they rise to being equal to your wife's desire? Like, the premise of this article seems to be anything your wife doesn't like is like fair game for divorce. And I'm like, okay, like, I get it. I understand how if you don't dig deep enough, you can like arrive at that conclusion. And here's how I've learned how to answer it, because it's the most accurate and relevant way to. When I would walk into the kitchen in the morning and I would have to reach into the cabinet for a new glass because there wasn't one sitting there. Or I had to open the dishwasher and pull a glass out of there. Not one time in the 12, 13 years we were together did that result in me hurting, in me feeling angry, in me feeling disrespected. Never happened. Not once was there like any significant sort of negative experience that I was having as a result. I didn't even think like subtle resentment. It was fine. You know how easy it is to like open a cabinet and get a glass. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
What I didn't like was like being hassled about it at the time. Is like how I felt about it. And here's the key difference, I think, in relationships in this scenario. When my wife walked into the kitchen and she saw the glass there, it was evidence of one of two things. And now this is in context after many, many conversations about it, by the way, not the first time, after the 20, 30 times having the same fight in the kitchen, the same argument, whatever it was. The glass sitting there meant one of two things. It meant, fuck you. I'm going to do anything I want. And you're not going to stop me. You're not my mom. You're not the boss. You're not going to control me. I'm going to put my glass here if I want to put my glass here. So it could have meant that. And the other thing it could mean is that I just did it absentmindedly. So she's so unimportant to me that I don't give a shit about her feelings. That's one thing it could mean. Or she's so unimportant to me that I don't even remember that she's adversely impacted by this. That she has tried 20, 30 times to communicate how this is important to her.
Yeah.
And like when those are the two things you're facing, I'm either with somebody who knows my wants and needs and they hurt me on purpose, or I'm with somebody who like they don't know or they don't even think about it. Like either way, I feel afraid that I'm going to keep getting hurt over and over and over again in this relationship because I apparently don't rise to a level of significance for him or for them or whoever it is, right? To like think about how I'm affected by these things. They only think about what they want. And anyway, that's really, really fair assessment of me. If I didn't think something was important, I trusted myself, to my shame. I trusted that my sense of like right and wrong, good and bad was accurate. I trusted that I was decent enough and smart enough where if something was truly harmful, I'd get it.
Yeah.
And so I just ignored it. I dismissed it as like, like the lunatic ravings of somebody who is feeling a little hypersensitive in a moment. And that's a really effective way to kill your relationship slowly.
Yes. So I want anybody that is listening to this that is in a relationship, put whatever example you want to put in there. If it's not the kitchen sink, it's the towel on the floor. It's, for me, I'm going to admit where I was wrong. My ex-boyfriend owned a business and I was in charge of and also paid to, answer emails and stuff and post social media. And at times I did not keep up with it as much. And it is a shitty excuse. And then that is one of his biggest pain points. And it was really hurtful to him. And he always asked me in a very, very nice way. Way better than I ever did because he's just patient and he can just say, hey, can you make sure you answer the emails again? And I now know that was something that when I didn't do that was just telling him, I don't care. This isn't important to me. That your other stuff that you have to do, like your podcast is more important and that I am at fault for. And I just want to put that it can definitely be, like we said, men and women. Sometimes maybe, and I don't want to speak for men, they don't know how to say this hurts me. It might just come off as like a criticism, to you. Am I still here? Can you see me?
I can.
Okay. I just want to make sure because it like froze for a second.
I'm really sorry. It was me.
No, it wasn't. My internet sometimes here. Okay. So just thinking of those things from both sides. And now another thing I want to add another layer to this because you said, after my wife asked me like 30 times, one of my downfalls that I know that was not productive in the relationship, and tell me where you think was it was the criticism. It was the being pissy at him for whatever, dish by the kitchen sink, dish whatever. And he did so many times say, if you would have just asked me in a nicer tone or not seem pissed off or not angrily ask me this, now I would never yell like, go put your effing dish by the sink. Not that, but it was also in the tone. Now, what do you think about that situation? Like, it's the 40th time you've asked somebody to please put something. Like, can we be annoyed? Are we allowed to be that? We don't want to be your freaking mom.
I mean, so yeah, when I was living it, I would have thought, felt, and said what he said. I would have totally agreed. Today, I'm so busy trying to advocate for like the other perspective. The analogy that I use is, imagine that like your wife or girlfriend or whoever, your relationship partner, it's certainly not gender specific, has a severe burn wound under one of her long sleeves, and you're working in the kitchen together, like chopping vegetables or whatever, getting ready you're just hanging out together, like getting ready to make a meal.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I thought of this. I just did. And I've been saying it for a few years now. But then you sort of like inadvertently like run your elbow into her arm, just, while you're chopping something or moving something around. And she like yelps in pain and she's really animated. And it seems like a really significant overreaction. And you're like, wow, like all I did was sort of like lightly bump into you. Like, what's going on? And then she rolls up her sleeve and says, hey, I have this wound here. I am going to reveal that when you do that under these circumstances, it hurts me. And the question that I ask, like the guys that I'm working with that bring up the story that you just sort of like shared with me, is how many times, even though you're a really good person, even though you love your wife, even though you would never do something intentionally to hurt her, how many times are you allowed to sort of like forget and sort of carelessly run your elbow into her burn wound before she's allowed to adjust her tone to communicate displeasure, before she's allowed to be sad or angry on some level? And there's no answer. This isn't a rhetorical question.
2.5 times.
I just want people to think about it.
Yeah.
How many times before your brain says, okay, I now understand why I might get an emotional reaction that doesn't feel comfortable to me?
Yeah.
Because I really think that is more or less the analogy. I just think our brains are better equipped to process physical injury and like illness more so than the nuanced idea of like emotional pain.
Yes.
But again, I spent a couple years like in a dark hole. And so I had context finally.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that can feel really bad in like a way I didn't know how to measure or calculate for previously.
Yeah.
And so I needed that personally to like open my eyes to what happens to other people.
Yep.
Which seems a little pathetic, I think, but whatever. It was my route here. And I'll take it as much as I regret some of the pain that happened along the way to the other people.
Exactly. Yeah. So to reiterate kind of about like the glass by the kitchen sink, it's just more about being heard, being seen, being understood, knowing people's pains, needs. I mean, like you said. So we're going to wrap that conversation up. I want to look at some of these quotes that I wrote down. Okay. So a quote that you had put on your Instagram that I really like, it says, most of our problems are not logical. They are emotional. Emotional.
Run with it.
I know.
Run with it.
What do you mean by that?
I don't remember who said that. Was that Mark Manson?
I don't know. I wrote down the other quote. I wrote down his name.
It sounds like a Mark Manson quote.
Okay.
And I'm an unapologetic fanboy of that man.
What? Mark Manson? Okay, I'll look him
Mark
up.
Manson. He wrote Subtle Art of Not Giving.
Oh,
an
yes.
F, and
an
that
F.
was
okay.
one of the right? Like just one of the most successful nonfiction books of the last, I don't know, 20 years. He sold like 12 million copies of it. It's
I'm trying to
extraordinary.
think if that's the book that I read. Maybe not. Okay.
And a film just came out this month. They made a documentary based on the book, and it's brand new.
Where?
And so anybody who doesn't like reading should check that out. I buy my movies through the Microsoft Store. But just like any sort of like online, it's going to be on iTunes. It's going to be anywhere people purchase movies. I think it's it's like a pretty brief, like 90-minute thing.
Okay.
Anyway, I think that was Mark. And I'm scared of this. Because stereotyping, I don't like it. I really don't, because I swear, like I have a brand new female client that like showed up yesterday, and her story and my story are like identical. This is just not exclusively a sex or gender thing.
No.
But I think if we observe like a large amount of humans, we'll notice patterns.
Yes.
And a lot of men bring certain common behaviors to a relationship, and a lot of women bring certain common behaviors to a relationship, specifically in male-female relationships. These dynamics that we talk about exist in every relationship, even non-romantic ones, with any type of partner, just with whatever. But like mathematically, the largest sample I have by far is male-female relationships, where these like patterns like play out so commonly. And I think, man, I heard it today from my guy this morning. This idea that it's so hard for me to engage in a conversation with my wife in the way that she wants to, because I feel like she's so illogical, she's so irrational. And to me, I don't have specifics to like for that story.
Okay.
But I would say that it's not fundamentally different from the dish by the sink conversation.
Yeah, right.
Where the logic, quote unquote, in my brain says, well, this really isn't a very important thing. You know what I mean? There's like really difficult, big, traumatic things that happen in the world. And it's difficult for me to categorize this glass being here as one of them.
Yeah.
As something worthy of introducing pain and conflict and relationship tension. That was the way that I thought about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We are emotional creatures. I worked in marketing for a while before I did this full time. And one of the interesting things I learned there in marketing psychology was that like emotion is like the number one influence of like what we buy at the grocery store. You know what I mean? When you like dig down, like everything, all the commercials that we see and print advertisements, it's about playing on emotion one way or another, almost always. And so anyway, I used to, I think there are a lot of people that are uncomfortable with emotion, usually men, and they want to like put it on a lower tier. They want to rank it as less important than logic and reason, right? They think it's sort of like it ranks less. Therefore, if you hurt, but I'm logical, I still win because this is the right thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a way to justify being the way that they are. And I don't, that's not me like blame. I think I thought that too.
Right. Right.
I think it was like my sort of like subconscious way of justifying me being me back when I was so convinced she was the unfair one.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you for answering that. I want to now talk about, I really want to talk about trust, because when I think of trust, my first instinct literally goes to, is this person like faithful to me? Like, I don't know why I guess that's the most obvious one, but you have said, I know in different interviews and things, like trust is the number one most important thing in relationships. And what other ways can people be trustworthy, or yes, we're going to stop there.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I talk about it, as you know, I talk about it a lot. I do. I'd like to start with that. I think it's really important for anybody listening that hasn't thought about it this way. Trust absolutely correlates with relationships that are healthy and that last a long time. Sustainability. Trust correlates like way more than love. People routinely end marriages of 20, 25, 30 years with people that they love.
Mhm.
But trust has been completely destroyed over time. And it isn't necessarily because of infidelity. It isn't necessarily because of dishonesty or criminal or abusive behavior, not overt physical abuse, at least.
Yeah.
But these subtle, I often refer to them as like paper cuts or micro betrayals or tiny betrayals, I think is the way to think about it.
Okay.
And that glass by the sink example, I think, speaks to that. A glass by the sink would not be a betrayal in every relationship. There are lots, millions of relationship partners out there that would not feel as if a dish by the sink is a betrayal. But my ex-wife did experience it that way. But again, this like micro, not like, oh, you betrayed me and I'm gonna like completely lose it. It's not that. It's just another of 10,000 paper cuts that occurred over, a decade plus.
Right.
And I mean, to me, I think the way to think about it is, and we'd already kind of talked about it, it's like this person consistently does things which result in me hurting. It's like the glass by the sink doesn't hurt me. I can't emphasize enough that that's not what somebody's saying. They're not saying when I see the glass there, I'm hurt because a glass is sitting there. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that mindset and they think it sounds so absurd. It's sort of what I'd alluded to earlier. Yep. The glass means one of two things. It means I overtly reject you being you, and you can count on me to not like honor like the way that you feel about this because I don't care. I don't agree. I don't care, and you can't make me. Like it can mean that something sort of like kind of like overtly mean and offensive.
Right.
But it can also mean this more subtle thing, and I think it's what it usually means. What it usually means is this person just does not consider me when they do things. They, all of the time in my daily life, in sort of like a shared domestic household, there's evidence all around, usually for one member or two members of the household, that everyone else has no regard for how the things they're doing, how the way they're leaving a room, right? Like the way they're leaving that towel or the laundry or the unmade bed or the toothpaste spittle on the bathroom mirror or the toilet seat being left in a certain position or whatever. Everybody has a different list of things that communicate something negative to them.
Yep.
And I really think it's useful to like think about it in the context of what I said before, like that burn wound. I actually think my favorite way is to think about it in the context of food allergies. Like I can offer somebody like a peanut butter cookie, and it's a pretty like benign gesture. It's even kind of nice. Right. Here is a peanut butter cookie. But there is some percentage of the population that could be potentially fatal to. And imagine treating a person who views a peanut butter cookie as dangerous, as poisonous to them, as a threat to their wellness. Imagine like judging them as weak or like, and again, I don't think that's necessarily an immoral behavior. I mean, maybe, I don't know, it dances with it. But like, I don't think we're obligated to care about other people's wants and needs. I really don't. I don't think it makes us bad if we choose not to do it. But I think it for sure means we can't be trusted in a relationship with them. I think it's okay to just be like, I'm going to be a single person who values my experiences over everyone else's. I'm going to be first place and everyone else is going to come second. I don't think it's the coolest thing to be in the world. I don't really like love how it feels to hang out with people like that. But I don't think it makes them like evil. I just think it makes them somebody that if you choose to be in a relationship with them, it's going to be really awful. And if you happen to accidentally sort of like have no self-awareness and you're that kind of person, you're a threat to lose everything you value most because of things you're not paying attention to. And I think that's a lot of people's story. It's certainly mine.
Yep. Sure is.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you something. Oh, going along with that, in this situation, I am sure that there are so many people, let's just say it's probably going to be women, about the kitchen sink. that feel so like, he just told me that this is not a big deal. He just told me it's just a freaking dish. He just told me. Am I really overreacting? Am I really like, should I not be doing this? And then you question and question and question more. But then the same experience happens over and over and over again. And then you're in the situation of like, well, I know how this played out last time. So then you just kind of take a mental note of it and like bite your tongue. But then like, I don't know. It just makes me happy to hear this conversation with you because it made me question so many of my things of like, I'm just somebody that just always criticizes about a damn like dish. And I knew that it wasn't about the dish.
Yeah.
It was about so much more, just like with his stuff. Yes, it was about answering the emails, obviously, but that was a signal to him saying, I don't care. I don't care. Um, yeah. So I just think it just really makes us question ourselves when we are being so told, like, you're literally doing this and saying this. You want to start a fight over a damn dish. And you're like, that's not what it's about. And it's hard to communicate that to somebody if you don't know how to use that language.
Yeah.
I thought I could. I was, something, like where I wanted my house clean. I didn't want it to be cluttered. Somebody else says, well, that's what you want. That's not what I want. So then it's like, who is right? Like, what do you do there? And
No,
it's
it's
hard.
tricky when there's mismatched values and preferences and wants and needs. I mean, that's why compromise is so critical when you share space with people. Sharing
Yeah.
space is hard. Like, I don't know how much you or anyone else listening has thought about this before, but uh, you can have a relationship pretty easily with an inconsiderate person if you don't live in the same house that they live in.
Mm,
Like, it's not very hard at all.
right.
Um, but the first step in elevating like graduating relationships into this entirely new thing is when you share space, when you share resources.
Yeah.
That really changes dynamics. And then often the next phase in male-female relationships and in any same sex where they're adopting children is when
Yeah.
you introduce kids. And then
Ah.
it really like that's when like the invisible load conversation like really like jumps dramatically if we're going to talk about traditional like gender norms and things like that, which whatever.
Ooh, can
But
we talk about invisible load?
yeah, I was uniquely gifted at dishonoring the amount of responsibility that my wife carried to manage the household, to care for our son, to acquire gifts around the holidays for all of the people in our lives, for RSVPing and or writing thank you notes and or communicating with friends about all the social activities. Like, I was completely blind to all of it, just this like the bullet point list floating above her head of all the various things she's multitasking
The
and
book.
juggling versus
The
mine.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty, if we're going to
Right.
talk about stereotypes, that's also a really common one, is this feeling by the female partner in a male-female relationship that their male partner is not invested in the shared responsibility of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that hurts, that it feels patently unfair to the person who's like, and what's interesting is like my ex-wife, she was fine. Everything was cool until like her son came along because she
Yeah.
could handle it. She was great.
Right.
Like the
Right.
math, she was like, I can handle the 70% load or whatever it was. Like, it's fine. But when our son came along, there was no way for her to carry that 70% load and properly care for a new human being
Right.
and adapt to a world in which she felt different and her identity changed from, just
Yeah.
solo human to I am the mother and caretaker for this like new little person.
Right.
Um, I was woefully inadequate as a support for her while she was dealing with those radical life changes.
Yeah. And something that's like interesting about that is for me, being a control freak that I am, a lot of it came down to like, shared responsibilities of like wanting help, but then another part of it was just like acknowledgement of like how hard you work. And I'm not talking about my relationship. I don't want to talk about that like specifically, but maybe that is some of like what people want. It's like, I'm happy to do this for my son. I'm happy to do this, but can you acknowledge and can you show appreciation that this is how much I did? Now, I'm sure there are other people screaming, being like, no, I want the freaking help. I want the shared responsibilities. I am in no way not saying that. But just how far like the little appreciations can go to like, oh, wow, he really notices that I do this much shit all day, every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year,
Yeah, a lot of men that I talk to are frustrated by the negative feedback they sometimes get. And one of the basis for that is that I'm never given credit for all of the good that I do. It's
Mm,
like nobody takes the time to point out like the good that I bring. They're just pointing out the negative, and it feels really unfair.
yes.
And I would ask these men, these people that feel that way, to understand that that is a virtually identical experience the other person's having when their contributions to your shared existence are essentially like not registered. They're not logged. If they're invisible to you, then they don't show up on any balance sheet, so to speak. And it's not a contest to like
Yeah.
account for like all the things everybody does. I don't think that would necessarily make a healthy relationship, but I do think it's critical to recognize how frustrating and lonely and invisible and small and unimportant a person might feel if the lion's share of their contributions to our lives are just lost in the ether.
Yeah.
Just they just go away all the time because like nobody sees it.
Yeah.
Nobody notices. And that was me. I had a mother who did a lot for me from a
Right.
like a food and laundry and
Right.
caretaking standpoint. And
Mhm.
the laundry fairy just would hang my clothes up and fold them and put them in drawers and things like that. And my mom
Yeah.
did a decent-ish job, I think, of making me do chores and learning some personal responsibility, but not I hope none of what I just said sounded like I'm accusing my mother of setting me up for failure in my relationship. It's on me,
Yeah.
but I entered the relationship blind to how being me and just doing whatever felt normal and
Mhm.
natural and comfortable
Mhm.
to me, the damage that would cause.
Yeah.
Like that to me is the real tragedy of relationships is people do not account for how being them can result in like harm because that's such an offensive sort of concept
Yeah.
until you dig and realize, okay, it's not a personal thing. It's
Yeah.
the other side of the math equation. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person. It has to do with like these series of events result in me hurting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that you said about the like reflection. Like it's basically like the men and women are saying the exact same thing. Like the women wants the acknowledgement and wants like help with the other thing, and then the man is like, I want to be appreciated for my hard work also. And I don't know if you feel this way, but or if you word that these things is like a lot of things in relationships are like transactions in terms of like, oh, Matt just did that thing that like I've actually asked him to do, and I'm tying that up as like, thank you, Matt. Like he listened. Oh my God, he heard what I said. Well, now I know Matt just asked me to go do that. He has been mentioning for me to take care of something. I'm going to go do that for them. And it's like this equal balance of like, since I heard her or since he heard me, I'm going to go do that. But then when it all gets out of balance and I don't feel appreciated, it's like we're almost doing this on a subconscious level, if that makes sense. Um, have you ever heard like relationships been described as that way, like transactions
I mean,
or
I
however you
mean,
want to say?
it would be in the spirit of kind of what we just talked about, this idea of like acknowledgement, like
Yes.
being
Yeah,
given
yeah, yeah.
credit for my
Yeah, yeah,
contributions,
yeah.
and like
Very
in
true.
that way.
Yes.
Because I think that the typical guy that I would encounter in my work in a male female relationship would say I'm not given credit, right? And like that's frustrating to him. And I mean, I think that I think that the most common dynamic in the relationships I encounter is that one partner, typically the female partner with men and women, is just much better at anticipating and meeting the needs of her children and her husband and or
Yeah.
partner.
Right.
And he's just not. I mean, it's sort of the basis of my work. Not that it's men, it's just often men,
Right.
but people. One partner frequently has much less consideration for how the things they do impact the other person. There's an imbalance of, I think about how what I'm doing or not doing is impacting them. And I adjust accordingly because I only want good things for them and I never want bad things for them. And so often it's like a really busy mother of 2 or 3 that's living that life and sort of like trying her best to meet the needs of everyone in the family and herself to a certain extent for whatever energy is left over. And so often, and this is one of like the pillars literally of my work, my coaching work. I just talk about 2 things. I talk about validation and I talk about consideration. And consideration is this notion of, do you remember that you have a relationship partner and that they are impacted by things you do and say? Because so many of, in my experience and so many of the guys I work with, the experience of their wives is that I'm with somebody and he just doesn't consider me. He doesn't like include me in his decision-making tree. And then taking it back to that sort of like dish by the sink example, it can only mean one of 2 things. He knows my wants and needs and he doesn't care. He refuses to meet them, refuses to honor them, or he doesn't know them because he doesn't think about me at all because I don't matter enough. But either way, if I stay in this relationship, I'm going to be hurt over and over and over again. That is the recipe for safety and trust to go away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Spot on. Okay. I would keep talking about that, but I know we're coming up on an hour and I really want to get to this last one because of how big it is. You just talked about, you talk about 2 main pillars, consideration, and your other one is validation. I know we've been talking a lot about it in a roundabout way, but you have something that's called triple threat invalidation. So first of all, obviously, what is that? And well, no, I guess that's my question.
No,
What is that?
No, happy to talk about it. So going back real quick to consideration, I think most of what happens in relationships is not people doing bad things that hurt other people and then, being confused about like what the problem is. Mostly it's like, I just woke up and went about my business and suddenly my relationship partner's like hurt or upset by something, right? That's how it usually works. Yes. So now we need to be able to communicate to our partner that something's wrong. Like that needs to happen. If we want safety and trust in relationships, we need to be able to raise our hand and say, hey, something's wrong. Please understand it. And then please cooperate with me in like mitigating the problem. Like that's the only way this is going to be okay. And it's remarkable how often that fails. One person frequently can't say something's wrong and then have it work out for them afterwards. That is a really, really common condition. It is in a relationship. And I'm telling you, it like that was my wife's experience with me. Yeah. And so I'll go through it. The invalidation, I usually actually put the word invalidation first. Not that I really care, but I call it the invalidation triple threat, but it's not particularly relevant. The point of it is it's like the 3 ways I think people on autopilot, they don't even think about it. It's not computed or experienced or calculated as invalidation on the side of the person doing the invalidating. It's I think disagreement's the best word for it. It's the most innocent, and I frankly think like the most accurate in terms of intention. In terms of here's what I'm intending to do right now is disagree with some aspect of what you're saying. And so here are the 3 ways we invalidate people in our relationships routinely. And this does not happen when we agree. We often agree. We share values and we have similar life experiences maybe as our partner. And so frequently somebody says, hey, something's wrong. And we respond in a manner that totally aligns with, I love you, I care for you, you can trust me, I've got your back, because it just makes sense to us. The problem happens when somebody says something that doesn't make sense to us. This is when like everything breaks down. And this, I think, is the most frequent paper cut problem in a relationship. I think mathematically, this is the quote unquote bad thing, damaging thing that happens most often. Okay. Each thing is so it's so small that it's easy to sort of like move on from. But when you collect thousands of them over a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, it just absolutely destroys trust in relationships. Yeah. Here's the pattern. There's the 3 ways. Version 1, I like to tell this in the first person. My wife would come to me and she'd say, hey, Matt, a bad thing happened. I feel bad about it. And version 1 is like a mental or intellectual disagreement with what the other person experienced. So like, I wouldn't agree that the event or the incident occurred as my wife believed it did. And one example might be like, we get together at a holiday party and one of the aunts says something to my wife about how she's parenting our son, and she finds it like really offensive, right? She thinks my aunt's saying I'm a shitty mother. Yeah. Something like that. That'd be like a really common sort of like incident. Yeah. And she would say that to me either like within a few minutes of it happening or like in the car ride home later or something. And I, being me, being like guy who wants to like not have conflict in relationships, I'm an avoider. I want to keep the peace, so there isn't a lot of discomfort. I'm going to be like, I don't think that's what she meant at all. Here's what I think she was trying to do. Or whatever, right? This can happen in a million different scenarios. The whole idea is my brain doesn't think the same thing your brain thinks. Yep. And that's what's really important, because I think the conclusion, when my partner comes to me and tells me something happened to her over and over and over again over many years, and many times my response is, sorry, I just don't think what you think. I think it's reasonable for them to conclude that I'm implying that they're wrong, that they're stupid, or that they're crazy, or some combination of all of them, right? Yep. Wrong, stupid, crazy. Those are 3 logical, in my estimation, conclusions for what it means to challenge the lived intellectual experience of another human being. You're either mistaken about this, you're too dumb to know what's true, or you're too crazy to know what's true. Version 2. My wife would come to me and she'd say, hey, Matt, this bad thing happened and I feel bad about it. And this time I am completely understanding what she's thinking, because I agree that the incident or the circumstances are exactly what she's saying they are. Yeah. But now I'm baffled as to why she could be feeling such like significant dramatic emotions about it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what happened. I understand, but why? Elevated to this like huge thing. And that's, what the dish by the sink is. Yeah. I was uniquely gifted at this one. I don't think I challenged like what my wife thought a ton, maybe a little. I don't know. It's hard to remember. This is the one I did all the time though. Yeah. Was like, I perceived her reactions to things to be really dramatic and hypersensitive. And so anyway, right, that's the feedback. The feedback is he doesn't feel how I feel. And so his response is that I'm weak, that I'm too sensitive, that I'm being dramatic, that I'm overreacting. It's version 2. Yep. Version 3 is defensiveness. Is we explain or justify or otherwise defend our behavior because, I don't know, we think we're being sort of like unfairly attacked for this thing that we did. And my wife would come to me and say, Matt, you did something and it hurt me. And I'd be like, wait a minute, just let me explain. If you understand like what I was trying to do, what my intentions were, you'll realize like I'm not the bad guy here. I won't be in trouble anymore. And that'll be great. But that's not what happens. I think subtle communication, the subtle message is, if I don't think you should feel this way, then I don't accept responsibility for your feelings whatsoever. That's on you. It's up to you to fix your feelings, not me. And so I like to tell this story, and I hope we have time for this, Mal.
Dude, I got nothing but time right now.
I've gotten some negative feedback suggesting that I'm comparing disrespected wives and mothers to a child. And I assure you, I'm not doing that. The royal you, like anybody, I'm really not. I just think this is frankly, this is just the thought exercise I used to overcome my serial invalidation habit. Yeah. I like to imagine my son, he's 14, but he used to be 4. And when he was 4, he was the threat was there for him to wake up like late at night crying for any number of reasons, right? And so like I like to imagine I'm watching Monday Night Football or something, and suddenly I hear my son crying, this little 4-year-old. And I'm going to sprint up. I'm going to hit the pause button. I'm going to sprint upstairs and I'm going to see what's wrong. And I open the door and he's like, Dad, you know, I'm afraid. I think there's a monster in my bed or something like that. And so instantly, in a millisecond, right, I disagree with like the premise of like his feelings. I don't think the reason he's scared right now or the reason he's crying right now, I don't think it's real. I don't believe it. And so my instinct is to think to myself, the fastest way to solve this problem is for him to believe what I believe. It's how I'm going to fix this. It's how I'm going to make it better. And I think like a lot of guys do this. A lot of guys that want to like fix or problem solve. And I'm going to be like, dude, there isn't a monster under the bed. There isn't one. You have no reason to feel afraid right now. You'd have no reason to be crying right now. Everything's fine. You're okay. Go to sleep. Like, I don't have time. You know, I don't think that I actually would have done this, by the way, even on my worst day.
Good. I'm just kidding.
No, right. But like, but I just think it's important to think through. It's a good thought exercise. And I'd be like, go to sleep. You're fine. Everything's okay. You know, we'll talk in the morning. I don't have time for invisible monsters, right? I hope there aren't very many parents.
There's real ones. That's why. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but I think there's the 3 ideas here that are really critical to acknowledge. 1, I'm right. I'm right. There isn't a monster under the bed. So like facts are on my side.
Yeah.
2, and I have to ask you to take this on faith. I love my son more than I've ever loved anything ever. Right? Like I love big feelings, love him intensely.
Yeah.
And the 3rd thing was I would never do anything ever that was designed to hurt him. And I just think it's important to point those 3 things out because those are the 3 conditions that exist when we're having conflict with our relationship partner. And again, I'm kind of speaking to the men or the people who kind of like think and feel the way that I thought and felt in my marriage. Like we don't agree with the premise. We love them and we would never try to hurt them. And that's the basis for our like befuddlement as to how like this is going the way that it's going. This like random like debate that we're having. So, okay. But despite all of that, what happens with my son? Well, I suggest that he's still afraid. He's still sad. He's still crying. You know, the feelings, the experience, the physical experience he's having in no way was served by me coming up there and, you know, telling him there wasn't a monster and that he didn't have any reason to be crying.
Right.
And I think my relationship with him probably just took a hit.
Yeah.
Just got paper cut, maybe even in a kind of a big way. Yeah. And I think if that's how we show up over and over and over again, the child or the person or whoever learns, right? This is a thought exercise. This is a metaphor, an analogy. He's going to think, wow, like when I'm having a problem and I invite dad to come help me with it, and he doesn't think my problem is actually a problem, I feel even worse than like having not asked them at all. So it's not necessarily I don't think dad loves me or I don't love dad, but I don't trust them. I don't trust my father to participate effectively in my life when something bad's happening, when something's going on. Yeah. And so you just think about a kid growing up and dealing with all the hardships of the teenage and early adult years. And it's like, they're not going to tell dad about it because it sucks. Dad just is like, you know, like sloughs it off and acts like I'm wrong. I'm stupid. I'm crazy. I'm weak. I'm hypersensitive. I'm overreacting. And he accepts no responsibility and comfort and support while I'm battling whatever it is I'm battling, large or small.
Yes.
And anyway, the way that I want to be in the relationship of any kind is the way that I think would be a more effective parenting style. I hear my son crying. I hit the pause button. I sprint upstairs. I open the door. The exact same thing happens. But this time, I am intellectually aware that if I communicate with my son the way that I used to communicate with him, I'm going to damage my relationship with him. And he's going to grow up to be someone who doesn't invite me to participate in the things that matter to him.
Yeah.
And I'd want to hug him and I'd want to say, listen, I don't think there's a monster under the bed, but I've been afraid of things before. And being afraid is really hard. And I'm really sorry that you're afraid right now. You know, let's turn a light on. Let's look under the bed. Let's make sure there's no monster there. But I think the most important idea, and this is what I say to every client where like this is a really critical concept for like their relationship dynamics. Mm-hmm. The one that I think correlates most closely with our like relationship partners, certainly like my ex-wife and I, I want to communicate to my son, hey, when something's wrong, I always want you to feel like you can call me, always. And I'm going to show up and I'm going to be there. And I might not be able to fix it. And I might not be able to fight your battle for you. But you never have to feel like you're in the fight alone. You never have to feel like you're the only person like dealing with the bad thing that you're dealing with. And that is what I never like gave her ever.
Another way to say that I know from like another expert that I've heard is, and tell me if you feel like this is true, what you just said, like, I'm not going to let you fight this battle alone, is I'm going to sit in your pain with you. I'm not going to tell you why your pain's wrong or bad or over whatever. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to come into to your level and I'm going to say, well, let's explore this. Let's, like you said, look under the bed. Let's whatever. Um, Thank you so much for, I mean, I've already heard that the invalidation triple threat, but I could always hear it again just because I know I've probably done it with my daughter with, her saying something that scared her or I thought she was overreacting and then I would be like, "Oh, yeah, that's not what she needed. That didn't serve her in any kind of way."
Oh, understood. And so what I want people to notice in their relationships is the following seemingly invisible cycle until it's not invisible anymore. The pattern is I do something. I don't know that it's harmful, but it communicates to my partner that I don't value them, that I don't think about them, that I don't consider them. That, right? I either did it on purpose because screw them, or I did it by accident because I was too busy to like notice that, this is the kind of thing we've talked about a bunch of times. Pain happens. And then they try to communicate the pain happens. And they say, hey, this is bad for me. Yeah. And then we respond, you're wrong, you're stupid, you're crazy, you're weak, you're hypersensitive, you're overreacting, or this is not my responsibility. Stop making your, insane feelings my problem. Yeah. And that pattern happens over and over and over again. And it doesn't kill love and trust overnight, but it will absolutely do it when it happens consistently over, I don't know, I'd say you start hitting about the 5-year mark and it gets dark. When you're, I think, on the receiving end of it, you start having some really difficult conversations with yourself about how many more years you're going to subject yourself to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know you just gave the solution and it doesn't change overnight. Like whoever's listening might go home tonight and be in this exact same situation and they could be on either way. The one person says I'm in pain, but the other person is like, okay, Matt just said something about my wife is telling me something. Shit, what did he say? What did he say? Because like you said, some of it is so hard to even like recognize it. You're just, I don't know. You gave the solution, but this
is really hard. And it's really hard. It's really easy to talk about like a child afraid of a monster under the bed. And it's really difficult to talk about, there's all kinds of complicated things that happen in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a disagreement about, what our teenage daughter's allowed to do.
Yeah.
And then, like one of the parents, like, allows like their daughter to do X, Y, and Z while the other one's on a business trip or something. And then that can create like significant conflict because it like one person feels like it undermines them and the other person thinks you're being like a domineering tyrant and not letting her do what she, I don't know. Like these are really hard human scenarios that a lot of people face. I always want to hyper focus on pain. It's the only thing. I am still resistant to doing something just because someone wants me to do it, just because it's their favorite way. Like, I mean, I'm happy to do it as like a matter of politeness, like most of the time, but over time I'll resent if like I always have to do things exactly as you want me to do them. Right. That's a concept that doesn't feel right with me. And it doesn't necessarily feel like it lends itself to healthy, balanced, functional relationships. But an idea that absolutely sits well with me is the result of my behavior doesn't mean pain for someone else. It doesn't inflict harm.
Right.
And I used to like not accept any responsibility because I never tried to hurt anybody. And so
you thought.
Yeah, the magic idea is it doesn't matter what my intentions were. What matters is the result. What matters is the experience, right? Somebody said to me, intention does not equal experience. And it was a beautiful line. I think it was Remy Pearson, who's like a life relationship coach type person in Australia. And who seemed like really wonderful, but I only talked to her the one time. But I think she's the one who said that to me. Intention does not equal experience. And it's a great line.
Yep.
Me trying not to hurt you doesn't mean you're hurt. Me kindly offering that peanut butter cookie to that person with like a potentially fatal nut allergy isn't me being mean, but it doesn't mean it didn't put them in grave danger, depending on the circumstances. Yeah. And I need to learn to accept responsibility for how what I do impacts other people. If I want to be somebody that can be deemed trustworthy. And anyway, that's how I think. To me, the litmus test is, do I want trust with this person? Okay. Yep. If so, I have to be very mindful of like how my behavior positively and negatively impacts them. And it's not going to be exactly the same as the way I experience the world, or exactly the same as my best friend or my brother or my coworker or my ex-girlfriend or whoever. Like everybody, I think most of our needs are about 80% universal. But man, there's again a lot of diversity out there. There's a lot of relationship partners who just would not get upset with me for leaving a glass by the sink. A ton of them. Yeah. But they'd have something else.
Exactly.
Something else
exactly.
Would hurt. And it's not about like the isolated incident. It's not about the specific event. It's about the theme of, do I seek to understand why something I do hurts you or doesn't hurt you? And then can you trust me moving forward to like honor that, to know you and to meet your needs to the best of my ability? My ex-wife couldn't trust me to do that. And I hope moving forward, the people that I care most about can trust me, because it's really important.
I love it. I love it. I mean, this is a loaded question, but have we covered most of your theories and things like that? Do you feel?
Yeah. I try to keep it really simple. I think if you vigilantly practice consideration for your partner, and it's not just about trying. That goes a long way, but it's also about results. Like if you try really hard to meet someone's needs, but never meet them, you're still going to lose trust in the relationship. So we have to succeed at mindful consideration. Yes. And in order, I think, to learn all those little nuances and idiosyncrasies, we have to be somebody who receives potentially uncomfortable negative feedback. That's how we're going to learn that we did something that resulted in pain for someone else. Yeah. I mean, those are the conversations that teach us how to meet someone's needs. And if we're going to spend all of our time trying to convince them they're wrong to think and feel what they think and feel, we're never going to learn what we need to learn to like meet their need tomorrow. Nope. So you're not. I truly believe that I don't know what the number is, but 90% to me of relationship health, trust can be met with that stuff. There's chemistry and personality type and shared interest, and that stuff really matters. But I'm like sort of like assuming that if you're with somebody in a long-term relationship, this stuff doesn't apply to somebody you've been dating for 2 weeks. Like not nearly as much, right? I assume if you're like married and are cohabitating like for a long time, that all the chemistry and personality stuff's already sorted itself out. Exactly. Well, this interview has been awesome, Matt. I want you to tell people what the title of your book is, where they can find it, and then where they can find if they want to be coached by you. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very proud of the book. I do think it helps people learn how to see this pattern in their lives if they're unaware of it, unaware that this might be why the conflict exists. The book is called "This Is How Your Marriage Ends: A Hopeful Approach to Saving Relationships." And it can honestly virtually any book retailer. I don't necessarily know if you'll like find it on the shelf of your local like Books A Million or Barnes and Noble. I think most Barnes and Nobles would have it. Books A Million are usually like a smaller thing, but certainly every online application is gonna have it for all the places. And my home on the internet is matthewfray.com, and that's the conduit to articles that I've written, to exploring like coaching and stuff with me, if that's something anybody would ever want to do. Perfect. And I will also drop your website link in the show notes, so that will take you to everything. Now, Matt,
I ask all of my guests this. This is the very last question I ask them. In your own words, what does the bright side of life mean to you?
Wow. I wasn't prepared for this one.
I never tell people.
That's really funny. What does the bright side of life mean to me? I mean, I don't want to be so like repetitive, but despite the dark and bumpy and painful route here, I am exceedingly grateful that a lot of my blinders are off now as to how, despite being really well intentioned and despite caring about people and wanting to be a positive, that's never, I've always been that.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like I see how I can accidentally cause harm, at least how someone, I shouldn't say cause, how someone else can experience harm because of me.
Yeah.
And I now have, I feel like I have like relationship skill insurance. I can protect myself and others from inadvertently experiencing like the worst thing that's ever happened to me, both as a child and as an adult.
Right.
And that like means a lot to me. And so I think you and I both share an affinity for this notion of like vulnerability and authenticity. And those are almost cliche in the personal development space, but man, it's like really liberating to not be afraid of what somebody's going to think and feel about you, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what like my college buddies and high school friends would have said back then
Right.
about me engaging in this work. And I think it might have been labeled, effeminate and not very
Right.
manly and something to be frowned upon in my little town in Ohio growing up. And I'm so glad to be here, like leaning into it, because this really matters. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think very much is more important to your relationship and quality of life. Excuse me. I said that completely wrong. I don't think there's something that like impacts your quality of life that will relatively increase it or lower it quite as much as the quality of your most important relationships. And so learning these principles and learning how to apply them in your personal life, I think can have the greatest impact. I think maybe only physical health, it rivals it in terms of how huge of an impact it can have on whether your life feels good or feels bad every day. Anyway, I'm so grateful to like come to these insights, and
yeah,
it
it's
feels good.
literally, it's the best thing in the world. And if I can just make a little note about your high school or college friends in Ohio, when you are your true, authentic, vulnerable self, it's incredible. Like the people that will come to you that you never expected because they see somebody stepping up and owning their truth and trying to help other people. I'm sure you've had some examples, but with me talking about my hot mess self, it just allows opportunities for other people to own their stories. So you probably will have people come to you that want your help because you opened up about your story.
I think that's exactly how and why it's happened.
Yep.
And the feedback is thank you for sharing your story. Sounds like my story. Maybe we should talk or meet or work with me as a coach or whatever. And it's pretty great. And just really quick, I'd like to defend my friends of old as men in our early 40s. The near as I can tell, everybody's been very supportive of the work that I do. I just think as teenagers, they would have been less so. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Matt, this has been so awesome and so valuable. I cannot thank you enough. I so much enjoyed this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you via the summit and all of this.
Yeah.
Would love to stay in touch to whatever extent you want to. Thank you so much for having me. I hope there's a next time someday.
Yes, there will be.
I wanna